Hello and welcome to the Calmcast, a time to feel calm and think clearly. I'm Claire Downham, the Queen of Calm, a transformational life coach. I was a burnt out head teacher who finally made the journey to calm after years of trying, and I want to prevent you from having to do the same. The Calmcast is a series of short explorations, gently guiding you back to your natural state, which is calm and clarity. Just listen like you would listen to music, with an open mind and curiosity. There's nothing else to do. Now let's relax into today's episode. So they say, don't they, that hindsight is a wonderful thing. And today I'd like to explore that with you, because often when I see people experiencing hindsight, it doesn't end up being such a wonderful thing. It ends up being a tool for people to beat themselves up with an awful lot of the time. Let me explain a little bit more about that. So hindsight is when we see something that has happened in the past in a different light, basically. And I guess hindsight is just another name for insight in terms of us seeing something differently. And it happens all the time, doesn't it? It happens with the simplest of things. Like, for me, I had a journey with weight loss for a very long time, or a journey with weight gain and weight loss and weight gain and weight loss again. And I had a difficult and emotional relationship with food. And I would eat something in the moment that, and of course in that moment it made perfect sense, otherwise I wouldn't have done it, would I? And then of course very quickly after that I would be filled with regret. I would see, because I was seeing things differently, that it was wrong of me to eat the food that I had eaten, and I'd feel pretty bad about myself. I'd beat myself up. I would be very unkind to myself, and probably as a result, feel an awful lot worse, and probably yet again end up eating something else that I guess the aim of which was to make me feel better. Because that's really all we're doing all the time, isn't it, as human beings? Trying to feel better. It's just we're often really misguided in the way that we do that, in the way that we try to make ourselves feel better. And that's because we misunderstand where our feelings are actually coming from. We don't understand that our feelings are coming to us via thought in the moment. We think our feelings come from the outside world, so we act in the outside world. So what I'm pointing to here is that hindsight is just new thinking. And have you noticed how fast it can happen sometimes, the hindsight? That you can literally do something and 5 seconds later, or even less maybe sometimes, you can regret it. You can go, oh, whoops, that wasn't really a good idea. And a great example of that is if we get upset with somebody who we love, we say unkind things, we shout at them, we call them names. We do. Just me then. We end up losing our rag in some way, and it can be literally seconds later that we think, oh, that was not the nicest thing to do. It didn't come from a place of love. It came from a place of frustration. Who hasn't, that's verbally with the people closest, but who hasn't sent an email and then later on seen it differently and regretted that action? I mean, I'm thinking now, are there any occasions when hindsight is a good thing? I mean, I suppose if it helps us to see where we misunderstood where our feelings were coming from, it might be helpful. So if I get angry with somebody and spit my dummy out and shout, or I'm rude to somebody or whatever, and then later on I realise or I see that in that moment I was doing the best I could, but I was misunderstanding where my feelings were coming from, then maybe that can be helpful. If I'm just beating myself up because I think I should have behaved differently, I should have been able to control myself, why didn't I control myself? Why did I lose my temper with somebody? And getting myself really caught up in self-recrimination, I suppose, then I don't think that's particularly helpful. And I have lots of conversations with people who should themselves a lot. And I think hindsight can bring about this shoulding when we see that right now we wish that back then we'd behave differently. We see right now that how we behaved that back then wasn't particularly helpful. It's really easy to wrongify ourselves, to should ourselves. We should have been able to do that differently. And that's because we're just seeing it different now. Your behavior is a product of a couple of things. In the moment where you think your feelings are coming from, and therefore how to correct your feelings, how to address those feelings, how to have a better feeling in that moment. And secondly, the thought that looks true in the moment. And the thoughts that look true in the moment change all the time, don't they? I'm sure you've experienced that. I'm sure you've had the experience of something looking absolutely true 1 minute and the next minute looking like it's not true at all. That happens to us all the time, doesn't it? So what I'm pointing to today, I think, is self-compassion, but not from a place of, well, you need to be compassionate to yourself. Come on, what can you do about that? I'm not pointing towards you making yourself be compassionate to yourself. But I think that comes naturally when you start to see that you are always doing the best you can with the thinking that looks true to you in the moment, and that later on you sometimes see that differently. And that can really look like you've made a mistake. But it's just that with the hindsight, you have new thinking. That's all hindsight really is. It's some new thinking. And it isn't particularly helpful to us to beat ourselves up about something that we did or said, in a way that we acted that we now look at and with some kind of contempt. I think if we all could stop looking at ourselves with contempt. And of course, this hindsight thing is, and this looking towards understanding that everybody's doing the best they can with the thinking that looks real to us. That's true for us, but it's also true for everyone else too. Everyone else is doing their best too. Now, the space that opens up when we see this for ourselves and we see this about ourselves is the space for creativity, because if we have done something that in the world of form has created some kind of problem, something for us to sort out, if we are not caught up in trying to understand past us and why we did that and why didn't we do it differently and beating ourselves up, then we have in that moment more space to take corrective action. Now, corrective action might just be saying sorry. It might be sorting something out that now looks to be not the way we would like it to be in the world of form. It might be just the space to come up with a solution to a problem that now exists because of what we did in the past. If we're caught up in beating ourselves up about what we did, trust me, guilt and beating ourselves up does not instigate the best and most helpful thinking in order to put something right. You know, when we start to see this truth about ourselves, that we can only do what we can do with what looks true to us in the moment. And maybe hindsight isn't such a wonderful thing unless it is considered from a place of realizing that we are doing the best we can with the thinking that looks real to us. I think there's a space here to notice how often in the day you might be using hindsight as a tool, as opposed to beat yourself up and feel guilty. Really great place to get curious. Thank you so much for listening. There's nothing to do now but bring some awareness to how this is working out in your life. Listen regularly to experience longer and longer periods of calm. This has been the Calmcast with Claire Downham, Queen of Calm. Take care and keep listening.